Welcome back to the AQUARIUS Samples video series. My name is Dave Gilby. In this video, we'll look at how to save time and reduce data entry errors by uploading results directly into AQUARIUS Samples, including all relevant metadata. We'll see how validation rules and standards can be applied to automatically highlight lab results that require your attention, saving time in the process while ensuring the highest quality data gets into your system. Let's take a look at importing data into AQUARIUS Samples.
Getting data into AQUARIUS Samples is very easy. There are many different import types that you can access to bring in different types of samples. One of the most common, obviously, is a lab report. Another one is observations. This could be historical data or data that you want to migrate from an old system. Locational data. If you're managing hundreds and hundreds of locations, you don't want to update those data points on an individual basis. Having the ability to import an update or new set of locations through the CSV import here is very, very handy. Observe properties. As you add different parameters to your sampling programs, you want to be able to add those in the associated metadata very easily. So observe properties and analysis methods and those import values allow you to update and add values very quickly. Taxonomic elements is another area where you could add a whole list of taxonomic elements that are pertinent to your sampling locations. Now, a few administrative things to point out on this page before we get started. Each import type has its own CSV file type that can be accessed here just by clicking on the hyperlink. There are two different formats that allow you to bring data drag and drop into the AQUARIUS sample system. One is the simple CSV format, which is the CSV file format here. Another is a North American standard called SEDD, S-E-D-D. And this is an XML file that you can drag and drop into the system. You can also copy the headers that are pertinent to this type of lab import to your clipboard and just paste those in a spreadsheet and start adding your data. So I'm going to bring in a sample from a project that I was working on just recently, and I'll show you kind of how the import system works. This is really going to exemplify the data level validation of AQUARIUS samples. So let's take a look at a lab report. I'm going to drag this lab report in from a file folder that I received this lab report in an email, and I store it in a file folder on my network drive. I'm just going to grab that file folder and I'm going to drag it up and drop it in the window here. And you'll notice once I do, the lab report name is highlighted here, and that's the data that's been selected for import. The next step is to hit continue. And you'll notice once I do that, I get the lab report name based on the file name, the date received. I can identify a laboratory that this data needs, or that this data came from. I can add my QC summary, my case narrative here. And then once I hit continue, the system actually validates the data that's in the file. You'll notice right off the bat that this data has some issues with it. Some obvious things that may happen once in a while. You'll get a spelling error of your observed property or parameter. This result actually has some issues that I know that are related to the type of data that is being expected for this parameter. Numeric data is expected for total carbon, and in the file, if I open it up, you'd note that the data is both numeric and alphabetical. So we have some letters and some numbers mixed in for a result that don't make sense for what the system is expecting. The last example that I have here is a new analysis method that's not coded up in the system. Now this could be the laboratory has changed their method name, or they just haven't provided you the methods you've asked for, but the system identifies this for you before you enter that data into the system. So let's take a quick look at, let's go back to the beginning, and I have a corrected file, same data, that I'm going to bring into the system. And you'll note once I do, we have lab report 2. This one's been corrected based on the previous errors. And I'll hit continue. Again, we can identify what laboratory, add a case narrative, a QC summary. I can hit continue. And it tells me that the lab report already exists. So this is a case where the data actually already exists in the system. And this is great because we don't want to duplicate data or have two sets of the same data type. And that allows the user to not have duplicates in the system that aren't supposed to be there. So we've seen what happens when we have errors in our laboratory files to prevent errant data from entering our data management system. Let's take a look at what it looks like when we have a file that works the way that it's expected to. This could be something like just a lab report that comes, week to week, and you want to upload this data. Same procedure as before, selecting the right laboratory, the right name, the date that it was received, adding some summary information, and hitting continue. You'll notice that this is all new data now. We've corrected the errors in the file, and we are going to take a look at adding alkalinity, ammonia, total carbon, alkalinity, turbidity, and mercury into these samples. Now, we may have not recorded our field data all in the same place. We may not have even created that information yet. We can create that information on the fly by simply saying, create the samples, the specimens, and the field visits for these new requests. Once we hit continue, you'll see we get some feedback saying that we were successful. We had 6 new data points imported, no updates, no errors, and nothing that was out of the ordinary. And then we can, furthermore, by clicking on this hyperlink, we can actually review the data we just imported. So again, here are the values. Here are the status of preliminary. Any new data is brought into the system is listed as preliminary, or whatever the initial status you have set in your system. We have a grade that is unknown in this case. We could change this grade by reviewing each one of these sample types. But we also have some other information that has come through on our lab report. Each one of these data points that has a orange flag on it shows that there's a quality flag associated with the laboratory result. That indicates to the user that we should probably take a look at things that may be interfering with our actual results from the laboratory in those particular occasions. Let's talk a little bit about settings. Some validation rules. AQUARIUS Samples, based on the date that the sample was collected, based on the sample date it was analyzed, can evaluate holding time on import. Again, more data level validation. We've seen the quality flag present, and we've also seen the ability to use some standards, but let's take a deeper dive here. AQUARIUS Samples has an entity called standards, and these standards allow the user to define ranges of values that are acceptable to the system. By this I mean for something like copper, we can define a upper or a lower limit or a range between an upper and lower limit that we expect our data to adhere to. So in this case, we have a human health criteria set to 0.3 milligrams per liter of copper. And the issuing organization is the World Health Organization. And anytime copper data comes in at this site above 0.3, we should see that flag. And let's test that out. So let's go to observations, and let's look at our location, 9999. We'll select our Warapo Creek. We'll select copper as the observed property. And once we sort those results, you'll notice that the first 2 values here have those flags on them. And again, if we hover over them, we get the tooltip that says this result of 0.34 milligrams per liter is greater than a limit of 0.3, which is that human health criteria we spoke of just a few minutes ago. So out of all the data that's associated with the copper data from this one creek site, we have 2 data points that violate that standard.
That concludes our demonstration of how to import and validate lab results with AQUARIUS Samples to save time and improve sample data quality. Now it's our time to learn. We'd like to learn more about your environmental monitoring program and discuss how AQUARIUS Samples could help streamline the management of your environmental lab and field sample data. To conclude this video, I invite you to book a consultation with our experts. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.